was standing in the parking lot of my new job's office building, keys in hand, briefcase rocking against my leg, when I got the call. It was 7:15 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I hadn't even clocked in yet. "Your ex-wife just lost her position," my buddy Mark said, voice flat over the line. He was 10 years ahead of me at that same firm, and we'd been running numbers side by side on Monday night, new client pitches, looming deadlines. I felt a knot tighten in my gut at how calmly he delivered the news, like telling me the coffee machine broke. I closed my eyes, pressed my free hand to the car roof. My chest felt heavy, like I'd swallowed a brick. The air smelled like diesel and early morning exhaust. In that moment I realized two things at once: that I was done caring about her spiral, and that I could breathe easier knowing I'd moved on. Opening tension burst. I trickled into my cubicle at 8, coffee already in hand. My boss, Judy, looked up from her monitor. "You okay, Sam?" she asked, because she could read a guy like a blueprint when his jaw was tight. I nodded, bracing the cup between my palms. "Everything's good. Just processing some news." She bit her lip, scratched her eyebrow. "Well, take a minute. Need me to cover anything?" I shook my head and slid into my seat, logging on. The glow of the screen felt like a lifeline, numbers scrolling across client files, budget spreadsheets, everything I'd sacrificed nights and weekends for. I forced my shoulders down, settled into the steady rhythm of work. 5 years ago, I'd never pictured finding satisfaction sitting in an office instead of dropping everything to be on call for her whims. It was here, in the mundane hum of fluorescent lights, that I felt the first real tug of relief in months. Relief that I no longer had to fix her, no more late-night texts about emergencies that always coincided with a blow-up in her newest relationship. Relief that her meltdown, her job loss, her mounting debts, they were her consequences, not mine. Flash to past pattern recognition. 14 years earlier, I married her fresh out of college. We were 20 and 23. She had the dream job already lined up at a local marketing agency. I was starting at a small engineering firm. We moved into a tiny 2-bedroom condo, scrounged by on ramen noodles and weekend IKEA runs for cheap furniture. I worked double shifts in my first year, designing CAD blueprints by day, installing residential cable after hours, just so she could finish her master's degree and set the stage for her career. She was bright, charismatic, funny with clients. I thought she was in my corner. For 13 years, that dance continued. I took on odd jobs, landscaping on weekends, tutoring math at the community college, to keep us afloat whenever promotions lagged. She'd start marching toward higher salaries: senior marketing associate, department lead, then regional director. She shuttled off to conferences, dinner meetings, networking events, and I carried the load at home: laundry piles taller than me, kids' soccer practice, dentist appointments. I was the dependable anchor that held the family ship steady. It was during her last promotion, when she finally started earning double what I made, that things cracked. I remember the day she told me, "I'm not happy anymore, Sam. This job I have now, I'm just going through the motions." She sounded bored, exhausted, like a car that wouldn't start in winter. I suggested counseling. She said I was just being jealous of her success. Patterns repeated: late nights at the office, bar hopping with clients, weekend retreats that she always had excuses for. The warning bells were there, but I dismissed them as mid-career frustration. I never saw the affair coming until she sat me down 8 months later with tears in her eyes and a confession about a married coworker named Bryce. Climax build, 3/4 mark exposed, disengaged, and free. That confrontation happened on a Wednesday night in early spring. I was carving chicken thighs into a pan when she strode in. Lights were low. The kids were already asleep upstairs. She peeled off her blazer, sat at the kitchen island. I set the knife down, turned off the burner. "I'm sorry, Sam," she said, barely above a whisper. "I've been sleeping with him for 3 months." My throat went bone dry. I could taste salt, like I'd been swimming for hours. I leaned against the counter. The granite felt cold beneath my palm. "You what?" She nodded. "It started when he helped me land that corporate sponsor." I know it's wrong, I know it's selfish, but I just. She pressed her forehead to her palm, fingers digging into her hair. I felt blood draining from my face, like I was about to pass out. I came up with one word. Why? She shrugged, tears pooling in her eyes. I was bored. I thought I deserved excitement. My hands dropped to the counter edge as if braced for impact. Everything in me begged to lash out, to scream, to hammer the wall. But I just stood there, shock, humiliation, rage, sorrow, fusing into a single sensation, heartbreak so raw it burned my chest. In the days that followed, I arranged for legal counsel, sold off the snowblower I never used anymore, refinanced the mortgage to ease child support obligations. I shielded our 2 kids, 10 and 7, from most details, dropping them at school before serving papers. I refused her demands to work things out, because I recognized her pattern, goalposts moving mid-game until I was a ghost in my own home. She never contested the divorce terms, she even signed the settlement without a fight. She insisted she was sorry, begged me to stay. But I was armoring up. I knew what a marriage founded on deception looked like, and it wasn't something I wanted to rebuild. Midpoint, his new grounding, her spiraling consequences within 3 months of the divorce being final, I landed a stable engineering manager role at a firm with clear career paths and benefits. I moved our kids into a modest 3-bedroom townhome, half a mile from the old neighborhood so they didn't feel uprooted. I started dating casually, nothing serious, until I met Emma at a mutual friend's cookout. She was a software developer, level-headed, straightforward, no games. We clicked over a shared love of biking and late-night tacos. Most importantly, she had boundaries. She wouldn't allow toxicity. If I started drowning in old drama, she'd call it out. I realized I hadn't felt this, centered in years. Meanwhile, my ex-wife's world began to crumble. 6 months post-divorce, I heard through the grapevine that her marketing agency division was downsizing. She'd briefly mentioned project cuts, but I didn't think much of it. Then, on a Friday afternoon at 3 p.m., her office called me. She listed it on voicemail, name still sickening to hear. They said she'd been let go effective immediately due to budget restraints. I felt a prick of, what? Not schadenfreude exactly. More like acceptance. The stakes she'd gambled with had finally come home to roost. I didn't answer the voicemail. Instead, I closed my laptop. At the gym later that day, I stared at my reflection mid-set, sweat slick on my back, muscles burning. My heartbeat in my ears, a steady drum keeping time with my breathing. I hammered out 3 more reps on the bench press, imagining the last time I'd seen her slip out of our driveway at dawn, suitcase in hand, heading off to another weekend. Team building. Retreat, this time to find herself. Consequences mount for her by the next week. Word leaked that she'd burned through her settlement. Vacation condos, expensive. Self-care. Retreats, covering bills when the job ended. The private art studio she'd invested in with her affair partner went under by summer. She'd poured $70,000 into that venture, convinced it would prop her up. In case she ever needed a fallback. The fallout, 0 product, 0 clients, a fixtures lease she couldn't pay. Now her credit card bills were in default. Collections agencies were sending letters for property taxes. It was like watching loose change slip through her fingers, bills stacking up faster than she could blink. A friend of mine, Tom, my former roommate and engineer brother from college, called one night. "Dude, I ran into her at the grocery store," he said. "She looks like hell, dark circles, had to use coupons for produce. She's living in that 1-bedroom she got after the divorce." Tom paused. "She asked me to pass on that she might need help with school supplies for the kids. And man, she's embarrassed, like she can't look anyone in the eye." I closed out my email when I heard that and felt a flicker of something heavy in my chest, pity or something like it. But I reminded myself, she chose to put herself in this situation. She lost the job she once boasted about, lost her savings, lost her reputation as the sharp marketing lead. I'd already moved on, but I couldn't deny a sense of, "I told you so." Not loud or cruel, just that painful recognition that her choices had destroyed everything she'd built. Climactic turning point, new happiness versus her final collapse late October, leaves turning red. I was grabbing my daughter's art folder from the car after picking her up from school when I saw her, frail, standing under the street lamp near our old house. She looked drained, clutching a crumpled letter from the utility company. Electricity had been cut off earlier that week. She caught my eye, and her face flickered. Part remorse, part something else I couldn't name. I slowed my steps. "Are you okay?" I asked, scaling back my tone. My kids were strapped in the back seat, unaware. She blinked, looked at the ground. "I'm managing. I'll get through it." Her voice cracked, like it used to when she begged me to come back. "Listen," I said, stepping into the cold, the wind tugging at my jacket. "I feel for you on the kids and everything, but I can't help beyond the support I already give. You made your bed." She nodded, head dipping. "I know. I screwed up. I'm sorry." I exhaled, bracing my hands on the car roof, looking at the asphalt. "Sorry doesn't pay rent or buy groceries." I steeled my jaw, attempting a neutral calm. "I'm happy now, and so are the kids. You need to get a handle on things, financial planner, job counseling. You need a plan." She sniffed, tears forming. "I understand." I gave her a curt nod and slid into the driver's seat. The heat clicked on, warming my back. I glanced in the rearview mirror, her silhouette shrinking under the yellow lamp, hunched shoulders, hollow gaze. My heart tightened for a second, then released. I shifted into drive. On the way home, I let my mind soften. I felt the first genuine smile in weeks, thinking about Emma's lasagna waiting in the fridge. About the kids' laughter at the dinner table. I'd spent the weekend coaching them both in basketball drills in the driveway. My world, though frayed, was full. I saw how fragile hers had become, jobless, debt-ridden, alone. I didn't gag on her failure, I just recognized it as natural consequence. I'd been the steady professional, methodical, values intact, while she chased a mirage. Resolution and dignity reclaimed. Thanksgiving arrived, and I found myself carving the turkey, kids fighting over mashed potatoes, Emma helping set the table. My ex texted that morning, asking if she could see the kids for a few hours later. I paused, spat out a piece of turkey, wiped my mouth. I glanced at Emma, she nodded, encouraged. "They're her kids," Emma said, quiet but firm. I texted back. "Sure. 3 to 6. Thanksgiving is family." I watched them go out her old front door, kids bundled in coats, her shoulders straightening as she held their little hands. In that brief moment, I saw her face softening, maybe hope flickered in those tired eyes. I felt neither triumph nor pity. Just clarity. I was protecting my sanity, my kids, my new life. I'd done all I could as a parent. Now it was up to her to stand on her own. By January, I'd built up an emergency fund, a month's pay in reserves, knowing my ex had zero cushion. She was working at a call center, part-time, still blasted by the size of her expenses. I'd check on the kids every week, send their school supplies, occasionally pick them up from her new apartment when she worked double shifts. I didn't refer to it as karma, but watching her scramble to keep it together taught me a lesson in patience and self-preservation, that letting someone face their own downfall is sometimes the hardest kindness. As for me, I was wrapping up mid-level management training, lining up a promotion by spring. I'd take the kids skiing at least once this year, something we'd never done as a family before. And at home, I had Emma, steady as a rock, who never judged me for my ex's implosion. She reminded me daily what real partnership felt like: respect, humor, honest communication. We talked about our plans: vacation to the mountains in June, maybe a small road trip in a camper van. We both valued stability, plotted our moves financially: joint savings account, a small life insurance policy naming the kids. I look back and see the pattern. She chased a flash of excitement, undervalued the marriage's foundation, got swept into an affair, then lost everything: house, career, savings, reputation. And I, through late nights balancing spreadsheets, weekend basketball coaching, quiet dinners with the kids, built something sustainable. Now, When my daughter hugs me tight at bedtime, feels my itchy stubble against her cheek, whispers, "I love you, Daddy," I don't flinch. When my son sprints down the driveway shouting, "Dad, look, triple dribble," I beam inside. My home is filled with the low hum of life, small bills paid on time, scraped knees patched with kisses, laughter echoing off walls. That's the real victory. She's still in over her head in debt, and working 2 jobs to make rent. Her social circle thinned out. Friends who once crowed about her title and lifestyle vanished when her paycheck shrank. Sometimes I pity her. Most times, I simply acknowledge the truth. She reaped the consequences of her choices. I warned her, I offered help, but she wanted sugar and sparkles instead of substance. Now that's her cross to bear. I've learned that a man's role isn't head of a broken family. It's being a protector to his children and a responsible steward of his own future. I took accountability for my own mistakes. I could have recognized the signs earlier, could have voiced boundaries harder. But I held on to my dignity, my capacity for compassion, and refused to be a victim of her drama. I stood firm. I made tough financial choices: emergency fund, child support payments, modest lifestyle. I prioritized mental health, therapy sessions when the nights got too dark, long runs to clear my head, honest talks with male friends who'd been through similar fires. Now, as the calendar flips to mid-March, I'm sitting at my desk with a half-full cup of coffee, morning sunlight hitting the window, planning a college savings plan for the kids. The chaos of her spiral is just a faint echo. My reflection in the glass shows a man who's leaner than I was a year ago. Weeks of stress melted half a pant's size off me, and yet stronger, composed, clear-headed, determined. And that's where the real victory lies, not in her downfall, but in my evolution. I left the wreckage behind and built something better, rooted in honesty, hard work, and love for the people who truly mattered. I'm not bruised by her choices anymore. I'm free from the burden of fixing what was never mine to mend. So yeah, she's drowning in her own mess, no big surprise. I'm standing on solid ground with kids I adore and a partner who values me. I feel the warmth of that every single morning when I wake up and see those 2 little faces at breakfast. I'm not hung up on her spiral. Her downfall became the turning point I needed. And now, 3 years out from finalizing those papers, I'm living proof that the good guys, who keep moving forward, always find their footing.